Greetings as we begin to celebrate the week of Holy Week in the church, as we get started thinking and reflecting about the work, the most important work of Christ there is in all of creation. The week he came back into the city of Jerusalem for the final time to do final things and yet to do beginning things, to celebrate his final Passover, and yet to set forth a meal of huge importance for his people as a reminder and a way to participate in his life and his presence in us as we go, to come and to remind us and teach us, again, still important lessons throughout the week as he entered the temple courts and taught the people, but above all to bear witness to what it means to be his people as he shows us through his humility and his confidence in God's presence, from the stone at Gethsemane and prayer and abandonment to trial and brutality of life, all the way to the cross in faithfulness, holding fast to God's promise, trusting in God's promise, crying out to God in his promise, and yet knowing the Father was good, so that by the end of the week we can see something special 7 days from now. I have been kind of walking around the gardens, getting ready to get started thinking about how to work outside a bit. And this year I've kind of noticed more than perhaps I ever have before. I keep looking at dead things. I keep looking at little sections of sticks that demonstrate where a plant was last year, where something was growing and brought beauty into the world and was the beginning of trying to begin and plant a garden for us in the parsonage yard. And now all there are is little clumps and little piles of sticks. But more and more I keep looking and I see in the midst of those sticks some new life. I asked Becky yesterday, I don't think our clematis is coming back. And she said, oh yeah, just look, there's the green little buds. You can find them. And that made me think about this week. How special that this week is, where Jesus takes dry, broken, dead, worn out twigs like us and brings life again from us. We're dead in our sin. We're dead in our trespasses. We're dead in our failings. And yet we're alive because Christ has claimed us and washed us and made us his people. That brings a joy to us, an understanding that despite the hardship, we have hope and possibility, and we have all kinds of things, because it doesn't depend upon us. If I'm that plant laying in the garden, there's nothing I can do. I'm still just dead and twigs and just a clump in the dirt. But Jesus comes with the same creating hands he came with at the beginning, to take that clump of dirt and to make it live. Just like the story of the dry bones in the valley in Ezekiel, to say a word that calls it all together, to say a word that brings it back to look like a human and to look like life, and then to finally breathe into it that life at a command, so that that whole group of people can stand. And that's the church. It's the valley of dry bones, when they all stand up and look at all of them that are standing there. It's the church that Jesus breathes dry bones into after he collects us back together and calls us together. Hence the reason why worship is so important together, to bring us as a body, to breathe into us a word of life and a word of hope, a word of difference and a word of promise. It's really interesting to watch now as the gardens are starting. Every plant I'm looking at and almost everything I'm seeing is coming back, but there's still more to see. I'm waiting. There's still new seeds to plant. There's more stuff to get going into the gardens. Yet all of it with anticipation. And if I'm so overjoyed at doing something like playing in the dirt and making something come up, you see, imagine how much more God is excited about it. I always tell Becky, I said, I want the plants to come back so eventually we don't have to do anything about it. They just come up and the garden is full. And of course we have to tend it and nurture it a bit, but ultimately it's needing perennials, things that go through the cycle, things that work through the cycle of life and keep on coming, keep on living. Even when they don't look like they're alive more than we know. And when they come to full blossom, an amazing thing and an amazing show happens. That's you and me and the church. That is the church. What a cool reference and thought it is to think of God planting perennials in his gardens. And of course, there are annuals. There are ones that come and go. But it's the church that stays. That's the power. That's the strength. That's the ones that have taken root and will continue to blossom and grow even in the middle of winter when they're there as a dead twig. Remember, he iced things and he made them look beautiful as a reminder, no, you're still coming back. You're hearing a promise. You have a promise. What a great thing it is that God does for us and does to us this week and for us above all. Something we can't do. We can't make it happen. We can't make it become salvation. We can't do it by our own works. We can't do it through our own power. We can't will it into being. And yet, so often we take it for granted. Most people ignore all of it, unfortunately. Because we forget that Lent was the time when the snow still might have been on the ground, when the dirt looked like it was running the place, when all the dead twigs were there. But now Holy Week, you begin to see the bud. You begin to see the growth. You begin to look for the hope and the promise of what's coming. And Easter begins the full growing time, where we move into a new phase of living in a different way that roots us as perennials in the church, gathers us together, calls us to share our blossom with others. That's why we gather together as the church. I hope that this Holy Week you take plenty of time to stop and reflect on what it is that Jesus has done for you this week and is still doing for you today, that he still is coming. He still is riding into life. He still is longing to teach. He still is longing to feed. He still is longing to show us. And he still bears us when we abandon him and when we depart from him and deny him. And he still saves us because he's made a promise to each of us in our baptisms that we are his and he will not leave us. I hope your Holy Week is a blessing. I hope you find that you get to see something new perhaps this year. But look close at the dead parts of life around you and know that in each and every one of those dead parts, there is something new waiting. And perhaps you're the one to help it grow as you share the gift of Jesus Christ with them as well. God bless you. Have a wonderful Holy Week. I look forward to seeing you soon.